The fork
All right,
trembled in
men.
his
Time to
hand.
go. Roger
Captain
that. Let's get
Friedrich
him. This
Weber
is it.
stared at the plate before him like a man who had just discovered fire. Crispy strips of bacon, 3 eggs fried golden in real butter, toast still warm with strawberry jam pooling red in the center, coffee black and strong steam rising in lazy spirals toward the fluorescent lights of the Republic Aviation cafeteria. 4 months ago, Friedrich Weber had been the hunter. Luftwaffe ace, 40 confirmed kills, the scourge of Allied bomber formations over occupied France. Then a P-51 Mustang caught him at 12,000 feet, American .50 caliber rounds tearing through his Messerschmitt like paper, and everything changed. Now he sat in Farmingdale, New York, wearing a gray uniform with the letters PW stenciled large across his back. Prisoner of war, the enemy's guest. And before him lay more food than he had seen in 6 months. The bacon called to him first. That smell, God, that smell. It cut through years of watery soup and moldy bread, through the lies his superiors had told him about American weakness, through every piece of propaganda he had swallowed whole. This was not the processed garbage they had described. This was real. This was abundance. Fritz picked up a strip, held it close. The fat glistened. The meat was thick, smoky, perfectly crisped at the edges while remaining tender in the center. He bit down. The taste exploded across his tongue. Salt, smoke, richness. The texture both crispy and yielding. Fat rendered to perfection. This single piece of bacon contained more flavor than anything he had eaten since 1939. For the war, before everything turned to ash and lies. A tear rolled down his cheek. He did not bother to wipe it away. Around him, American workers ate their breakfast, talking and laughing, completely unaware that a German pilot was having his worldview shattered by breakfast meat. A black mechanic 2 tables over joked with a white engineer. A woman in coveralls sketched something on a napkin, equations flowing around diagrams of aircraft wings. Jazz music drifted from a radio in the corner. This was not supposed to be possible. Germany was supposed to be superior, disciplined, strong. America was supposed to be weak, soft, a nation of mongrels and capitalists who cared only for profit. That is what they told him. That is what he believed. The bacon said otherwise. Fritz finished the strip and reached for another. Then the eggs, then the toast. He ate slowly, methodically, savoring every bite. Not because he was hungry, though he was, not because the food was good, though it was extraordinary. He ate slowly because every mouthful forced him to confront a terrible truth. They had lied to him about everything. Across the cafeteria, a man watched. Colonel Thomas Harrison, 48 years old, silver hair cropped, military short eyes that had seen too much death to smile easily. He stood with his arms crossed, studying the German prisoner the way a chess master studies an opponent's opening move. Next to Harrison stood a woman, Sarah Mitchell, 36, dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, grease stains on her work shirt, a slide rule jutting from her pocket. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes were hard. "This is a mistake," Sarah said quietly. Harrison did not look at her. His gaze remained fixed on Fritz, on the tears tracking down the German's face, on the way those hands trembled as they lifted another piece of bacon. "Maybe," Harrison replied, "maybe not. He killed our men, shot down our pilots, and you bring him here, feed him breakfast, show him our aircraft." "Mrs. Mitchell, do you know what I see when I look at that man?" Sarah said nothing. "I see someone discovering he was wrong. That is a powerful thing. That is the beginning of everything." Fritz finished his breakfast. He sat back staring at the empty plate, and for the first time in 4 months felt something other than despair or anger or fear. He felt confusion. A guard approached. Young kid, maybe 23, Texas accent, name tag reading Cooper. Lieutenant James Cooper, Jimmy to his friends, though Fritz doubted the German would ever be counted among them. "Time to move, Fritz," Jimmy said. Not unkindly, but not warm either. The tone of a man doing a job he did not particularly enjoy. Fritz stood. His legs felt weak. Whether from malnourishment or emotional shock, he could not say. "Where?" Fritz asked. His English was good, accented but clear. "Colonel wants to show you something." They walked through corridors that smelled of machine oil and coffee and possibility. Workers streamed past men and women, both carrying blueprints and tools, calling out to each other in that casual American way that Fritz found both fascinating and disturbing. No rigid hierarchy, no visible fear. People worked because they wanted to, not because they feared punishment. Another lie exposed. Jimmy led him to a large door, heavy steel. A guard checked identification, nodded, pulled it open. Cool air rushed out, the smell of aircraft fuel and fresh paint. They stepped into the hangar. Fritz stopped breathing. Before him, gleaming silver under harsh industrial lights, sat the Republic XP-47J, a fighter unlike anything he had seen. Sleeker than the standard Thunderbolt, cleaned of excess weight, every line optimized for one purpose: speed. Fritz had flown fast aircraft. The F-109K4 could touch 440 miles per hour in the right conditions with the right boost. He had read intelligence reports about the new Focke-Wulf Tu-152 claiming 472 miles per hour at extreme altitude. He knew the Dornier DO-335 was pushing boundaries with its revolutionary push-pull engine configuration. But this American machine, this represented something different. Colonel Harrison appeared beside him, close enough to speak quietly, far enough to move if the prisoner tried something stupid. 502 miles per hour, Captain Weber. Fritz turned to look at him, searching for the lie, for the exaggeration. Harrison's face showed only truth. Impossible, Fritz whispered. We tested it last week, validated by 3 independent observers. Your intelligence services probably already know, but I wanted you to see it with your own eyes. Sarah Mitchell stood on the other side of the aircraft, one hand resting on the engine cowling, with a familiarity that spoke of countless hours working on this machine. She glared at Fritz across the fuselage. If looks could shoot down enemy aircraft, the German would already be burning. Fritz walked forward, slowly, like approaching a wild animal. His engineer's eye cataloged details. The R2800 engine, massive 28 cylinders of American industrial might. The propeller perfectly balanced. The canopy streamlined to reduce drag. Every rivet flush, every seam smooth. Weight shaved from every possible location. The craftsmanship was undeniable. He reached out, touched the metal. Cold, real. Not propaganda, not imagination. 502 miles per hour. Germany's fastest operational fighter topped out at 440. On paper, the Tu-152 might match 470. Maybe. In perfect conditions. At 40,000 feet with GM1 boost and a pilot willing to risk structural failure. This American aircraft had hit 502. And judging by the other aircraft Fritz could see in this hangar, by the workers swarming over partially assembled fighters, by the sheer scale of this operation, this was not a one-off prototype. This was American capacity, American innovation, American abundance made manifest in aluminum and steel. Why, Fritz managed, why show me this? Harrison studied him for a long moment. Then he gestured to a small office off the main hangar floor. Let's talk. They sat in a room that smelled of coffee and metal shavings. Harrison poured 2 cups, handed one to Fritz. The German held it like a sacred object. You were shot down August 14th, 1944, Harrison said, over Normandy, by a P-51 Mustang flown by Captain Robert Hayes out of the 352nd Fighter Squadron. Fritz nodded slowly. He remembered. The Mustang appearing out of the sun, the tracers, the engine fire, the terrifying descent. The Americans pulling him from the wreckage. The strange gentleness of his captors. You've been in 3 different POW camps since then, Harrison continued. Standard treatment. Not great food. Cold barracks. But alive. Safe. Yes. Yesterday you were transferred here under special orders. Do you know why? No. Harrison leaned forward, his eyes intense now, focused. Because you are the best test pilot the Luftwaffe ever produced. Because before you were a fighter ace, you were an engineering student at Munich. Because you flew prototype aircraft for Messerschmitt and Focke-Wulf. Because you understand high-altitude performance aerodynamics and structural limitations better than 99% of the pilots on either side of this war. Fritz said nothing, waited. And because the war is ending, Captain, everyone knows it. Germany cannot win. It is only a question of how many more men die before the inevitable surrender. The truth of this settled like lead in Fritz's stomach. He had known it for months, but hearing an enemy officer state it so plainly made it real in a new way. "What do you want from me?" Fritz asked. Harrison set down his coffee cup. "I want you to help us verify the performance data on our high-speed aircraft. I want your expert opinion on our designs. I want you to tell us what we are doing right and what we are doing wrong. You want me to betray my country. I want you to help end this war faster. Save lives, German lives, American lives, and all the lives that will be thrown away in the next 6 months as Germany fights a battle it has already lost." Fritz stood abruptly, paced to the window, looked out at the factory floor where American workers built the instruments of his nation's defeat. "And if I refuse, you go back to the POW camp, watery soup, cold barracks. You sit out the rest of the war in captivity. Then eventually you go home to whatever is left of Germany. And if I agree, real food, access to our facilities, the chance to fly aircraft that will make your Messerschmitt look like a training plane, technical discussions with the best aviation engineers in the world." Harrison paused. "Let that sink in. And when the war ends, we help you bring your family to America. Safety, citizenship, a new life." The offer hung in the air between them. Impossible, tempting, terrible. Fritz thought of his father, an engineer still in Munich as far as he knew. His sister, 19 years old, caught in a city that British and American bombers visited regularly. He thought of the Germany he had believed in, the Germany that had promised glory and delivered only ash. He thought of the bacon, that perfect, impossible bacon. "I will observe," Fritz said finally. "I will provide technical analysis, but I will not spy. I will not betray operational secrets." Fair enough. They shook hands, the grip of former enemies, the beginning of something neither man fully understood yet. What Fritz did not know was that Sarah Mitchell had been listening at the door. And what Sarah did not know was that this German pilot had once months ago over France encountered a damaged B-17 limping home and chosen to let it pass rather than finish it off. What neither of them knew was that the test pilot who had died flying the XP-47J prototype had been Colonel Harrison's son. These truths would come later. For now, Fritz simply followed Lieutenant Cooper out of the office back through the factory toward barracks that would be his home for however long this strange arrangement lasted. Behind them, Sarah Mitchell stood in the shadows, fists clenched, thinking about her husband, David, shot down over Germany 14 months ago, thinking about the wedding ring she still wore, thinking about the night she spent alone in a house that was too quiet, thinking about the anger that lived in her chest like a second heart. A German. Here. Working with them. It felt like betrayal. But Harrison was her commanding officer, and she was a professional, so she would do her job. She would work on the XP-72, the next evolution of high-speed piston fighters. She would help America build the fastest aircraft in the world, and she would hate every moment that German pilot spent in her workspace. The morning passed in a blur for Fritz. He was given new quarters, not luxurious but clean, a real bed, a window overlooking the airfield. He was issued work clothes, given access to certain areas of the facility, told where he could and could not go. At lunch, he returned to the cafeteria. This time, more eyes followed him. Word had spread. The German, the POW. The guy Harrison brought in to look at the speed demons. Fritz took a tray, moved through the line. A cook, heavy-set black man with kind eyes spooned food onto his plate without comment. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes swimming in gravy, corn on the cob, bright yellow and glistening with butter. A slice of epaulepi. Fritz found an empty table. Sat alone. The fried chicken was even better than the bacon. He had just taken his first bite, the crispy skin crackling between his teeth, the meat tender and perfectly seasoned, when someone sat down across from him. The black mechanic from breakfast. Older guy, maybe 40, name patch reading Williams. "First time with Southern Fried?" Williams asked. Fritz nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. "Wait until you taste the gravy." Williams showed him how to mix it with the mashed potatoes. Fritz followed the example, lifted a forkful to his mouth. The combination of flavors was transcendent, rich, savory, comforting in a way he had not experienced since childhood Sunday dinners before the world went mad. Good, right? Williams grinned. Yes, Fritz managed. Very good. They ate in companionable silence for a moment. Then Williams said casual as discussing weather. My brother's in France right now. Tank commander. Probably shooting at your buddies. Fritz looked up sharply, but Williams's face showed no hostility, just statement of fact. I am sorry, Fritz said. For what? You were doing your job. He's doing his. That's war. Williams shrugged. Me, I will just fix airplanes. Figure that's my part. Make sure our boys got the best machines possible. The machines here, Fritz said carefully, they are very good. Best in the world, friend, best in the world. William stood, gathered his tray. Enjoy the pie. Cook makes it fresh every morning. He walked away, leaving Fritz alone with his thoughts and his apple pie, and the growing realization that everything he thought he knew about America had been constructed from lies. That afternoon, Jimmy Cooper took him on a tour of the flight line. Aircraft everywhere. P-47 Thunderbolts in various configurations. A sleek P-51H Mustang, the latest variant being prepped for testing. Further down, Fritz spotted something that made his heart skip. A captured Messerschmitt F-109K4, his aircraft, or one exactly like it. We got that one last month, Jimmy said, following Fritz's gaze. Pilot bailed out over Belgium. We flew it back here. Been testing it, comparing to our birds. Fritz walked toward it like a man in a dream. His hands knew this aircraft. Every switch, every gauge, the smell of it, the feel of the control stick. He had lived in cockpits like this for 3 years. 440 miles per hour, Jimmy said. Impressive, fast for its weight class. With MW50 boost, Fritz added automatically, at optimum altitude, clean configuration. Yeah, we figured that out. Also figured out it handles like garbage above 20,000 feet. And the fuel injection system is too damn complicated. Maintenance nightmare. Fritz bristled, then stopped. Because Jimmy was right. The K4 was a maintenance nightmare. He had spent countless hours waiting for mechanics to fix injection problems. The American system, Fritz said, it is simpler. Simpler and more reliable. That's the whole philosophy. We don't build the perfect machine. We build the good enough machine that we can build 10,000 of. 10,000. Fritz thought of German factories bombing runs, interrupting production materials, shortages, slave labor, producing substandard components. He thought of the desperate push to field the Me-262 jet, the Do-335, the Teo-152. Wonder weapons that would turn the tide. Except they came too late in too few numbers, maintained by exhausted ground crews with insufficient parts. America built 10,000 of the good enough machine. Germany built dozens of the perfect machine. The math was brutal and undeniable. Want to sit in it? Jimmy asked. Fritz looked at him surprised. Colonel said you could, long as I'm watching. Fritz climbed onto the wing, slid into the familiar cockpit. His body knew these movements. Hands found the stick, the throttle. Feet rested on rudder pedals. The greenhouse canopy that had saved his life and nearly killed him. For a moment he was home. Then he looked around, saw the American mechanics working on American aircraft, saw the sheer volume of production, saw the future. And he knew Germany had lost this war before it ever began. He climbed out slowly. Jimmy waited, watching carefully, hand near his sidearm. Thank you, Fritz said. Sure. They walked back toward the main hangar in silence. The December sun hung low and pale in the New York sky. Somewhere across the Atlantic, men were dying in snow and mud. Somewhere over the Pacific, other men were dying in fire and water. And here in Farmingdale, a German pilot was learning that the world was bigger and stranger and more complicated than propaganda ever admitted. That evening, Colonel Harrison summoned Fritz to his office. Sarah Mitchell was there. Her face was stone. On Harrison's desk lay a photograph. A young man in a P-51 Mustang grinning at the camera. Handsome, confident, alive. Captain Weber, Harrison said, this is Lieutenant David Mitchell, Sarah's husband. He was shot down over Germany 14 months ago, killed in action. Fritz looked at the photograph, looked at Sarah, saw the pain and rage in her eyes. You might have shot him down, Harrison continued. Or maybe it was another German pilot. We will never know. What we do know is that men like you killed him. Colonel, Sarah began, but Harrison raised a hand. Mrs. Mitchell needs to work with you, Captain. The XP-72 program requires her expertise. and I need your input on high-altitude performance testing. So you will work together." Sarah's jaw tightened. "But first," Harrison said, looking directly at Fritz, "I want you to understand what your war cost her. Cost all of us. I want you to look at that photograph and know that this was a real person, an American who believed in freedom, who died fighting the tyranny you served." Fritz could not look away from the photograph. The young man's smile, the wedding ring visible on his hand gripping the cockpit frame. "I am sorry," Fritz said quietly, and meant it. "Sorry doesn't bring him back," Sarah said. Her voice was ice. "No, it does not." They stood there, three people bound by war and loss and the cruel mathematics of survival. Outside, another aircraft engine roared to life. The sound of testing, the sound of progress, the sound of a world trying to build something better from the ashes of something terrible. "Dismissed," Harrison said. Sarah left without looking at Fritz. The German stayed behind. "Colonel, I must ask, why do you truly want me here?" Harrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he opened a desk drawer, pulled out another photograph. A young man, different uniform, different aircraft, but the same smile. "My son," Harrison said. "Michael, he was the test pilot on the XP-47J program. He died 6 weeks ago when the prototype experienced structural failure at 503 miles per hour. Fritz felt his breath catch. He was pushing too hard, trying to verify the upper limit. The airframe couldn't handle it. Neither could he. Harrison put the photo away. "I brought you here, Captain Weber, because I need to believe his death meant something. That we can turn enemies into allies. That we can win not just the war, but the peace that follows. I do not know if I can be that man. Neither do I. But tomorrow morning at 0600, you will fly a P-47M Thunderbolt, 473 miles per hour. You will tell me how it compares to your German aircraft. You will help us validate our data, and maybe, just maybe, you will help us end this war a little bit faster." Fritz nodded slowly. That night, lying in his bunk, he could not sleep. His mind replayed the day. The bacon, the fried chicken, the aircraft, the photographs, Sarah's hatred, Williams's casual acceptance, Jimmy's grudging professionalism, Harrison's terrible honesty. He thought about the oath he had sworn to Germany, to the Führer, to the Reich that was supposed to last 1,000 years. He thought about the lies. He thought about the bacon. Somewhere in the darkness he made a decision, or perhaps the decision made itself. Tomorrow he would fly an American aircraft, and he would tell them the truth, whatever that might cost him. The P-47M Thunderbolt sat on the runway like a sleeping giant. Morning fog clung to the tarmac, and somewhere in the east the sun was thinking about rising. Fritz stood beside the aircraft in borrowed flight gear, American leather and American wool, the smell of it foreign and familiar all at once. Sarah Mitchell performed the final checks. Her hands moved with the precision of someone who had done this 1,000 times. She did not look at Fritz, had not looked at him directly since that moment in Harrison's office when he stared at her dead husband's photograph. Fuel full, oil pressure good, magnetos checked, radio functional. Her voice was clipped, professional, cold as the December air. "Thank you," Fritz said. She walked away without responding. Jimmy Cooper leaned against the wing coffee cup steaming in his hands. He had been up since 4, preparing the chase plane, making sure every detail was perfect. Not for Fritz's sake, for the mission's sake. "You remember the flight plan?" Jimmy asked. "Climb to 25,000 feet, level flight, full military power, hold speed for 5 minutes, report readings every 30 seconds. And if something goes wrong, I bail out and spend the rest of the war in a cell." Jimmy almost smiled. Something like that. Fritz climbed onto the wing. The metal was cold through his gloves. He settled into the cockpit, and the feeling washed over him. Home. This was home. This was not Germany, not any particular country, but this, the cockpit, the instruments, the moment before flight when the whole world compressed down to you and the machine and the sky waiting above. The R2800 engine coughed once, twice, then roared to life. 28 cylinders, 2,800 horsepower. The entire aircraft shook with barely controlled violence. Fritz felt it in his chest, in his bones, in the place where fear and exhilaration lived, side by side. He ran through the checklist, everything in English now, a language that 3 years ago he barely spoke and now flowed through his mind as easily as German. The human capacity for adaptation was remarkable, terrible and remarkable. Tower cleared him for takeoff. Fritz released the brakes. The Thunderbolt surged forward, heavy, powerful, inexorable. The tail came up. The runway blurred beneath him. Then that perfect moment of transition wheels, leaving Earth gravity, releasing its grip, the world falling away. He was flying. The climb was steady, strong. The R-2800 pulled him upward through morning clouds that wrapped the aircraft in gray nothing before spitting him out into crystalline blue. At 15,000 feet, Fritz leveled off briefly to check systems. Everything nominal. Jimmy's chase plane was a dark speck 200 yards off his right wing. "How's she feel, Fritz?" Jimmy's voice crackled through the radio. "Good, very good. Wait until you open her up." At 25,000 feet, the air was thin and bitterly cold despite the cockpit heater. Fritz leveled the aircraft, trimmed it carefully, let the speed stabilize at cruise. Then he pushed the throttle forward. Full military power. The Thunderbolt accelerated, 400 miles per hour, 420, 440. The airspeed indicator climbed steadily. The airframe remained stable, solid, no shimmy or shake. German fighters at this speed would be dancing on the edge of control. The P-47M felt like it was just getting started, 460 miles per hour. Fritz called out the reading, checked his watch, held the speed steady, 470 miles per hour. The aircraft was a symphony of engineering, every system working in harmony. The supercharger feeding pressurized air to the engine. The propeller biting through thin atmosphere with perfect efficiency. The wings generating lift with mathematical precision. 473 miles per hour. He held it there. 5 minutes at speed. The world below reduced to abstract patterns of field and forest, town and river. From up here you could not see the war, could not see the division between Allied and Axis territory, could not see the hatred and fear and propaganda that turned men into killers. From up here it was just the earth, beautiful, whole, indifferent to human madness. And in that moment something broke inside Fritz Weber. Or perhaps it was not breaking. Perhaps it was opening. He looked down at America, untouched by bombs, factories running at full capacity, cities intact, farms productive, an entire nation mobilized for war, but safe from its direct devastation. He thought of Munich the last time he saw it. Rubble in the streets, buildings collapsed, his father's engineering firm reduced to a basement and 3 remaining employees. His sister living in a bomb shelter more often than in their apartment. Germany had started this war, had chosen conquest, had chosen genocide, and now Germany was paying the price. But America had the capacity to absorb this conflict and keep building, keep producing, keep feeding its people real bacon and fried chicken and apple pie, keep treating prisoners of war with a basic dignity that Fritz had never imagined possible. The realization settled over him like a heavy coat. Germany could not win this war, had never been able to win this war. The mathematics were too brutal. The industrial capacity too unbalanced. Every P-47 shot down was replaced by 2 more. Every B-17 destroyed was avenged by a dozen. And all the wonder weapons in development, all the jets and rockets, and last-ditch miracles would not change the fundamental equation. This war was over. Had been over since 1941 when Germany invaded Russia and Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. Everything since then was just the slow, terrible process of reality catching up to delusion. "Fritz, you still with us?" Jimmy's voice cut through his thoughts. "Yes. Speed holding at 473 miles per hour. Level flight. All systems normal." "Good. Bring her home." The descent was gentle. Fritz did not want to leave the skiwing. Up here, things made sense in a way they did not on the ground. Up here, he was just a pilot, not German or American, not victor or vanquished, just a man doing the thing he was born to do. But gravity always wins. The runway appeared below. Fritz configured the aircraft for landing. Gear down, flaps extended, speed bleeding off. The wheels kissed concrete with barely a chirp. A perfect landing, muscle memory, and skill transcending nationality. Sarah was waiting when he taxied to the hangar, her arms crossed, her face unreadable. Fritz shut down the engine. The sudden silence was profound. He climbed down from the cockpit legs, shaky from adrenaline and cold, and something deeper he could not quite name. "Well," Sarah asked, "what do you think of American engineering now?" Fritz pulled off his helmet, met her eyes, chose honesty over pride. "It is exceptional. The power-to-weight ratio, the stability at high speed, the ease of control. We have nothing like this." Sarah blinked. She had expected defensiveness, excuses, the standard German superiority complex, not this quiet admission of defeat. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because it is the truth, and I am tired of lies." They stood there in the cold morning, the thunderbolt ticking as the engine cooled two people on opposite sides of an unbridgeable divide who suddenly found themselves on the same side of something more fundamental. The truth. The simple, terrible, liberating truth. "I still hate you," Sarah said, but there was less conviction in it now. "I understand." She walked away, but slower than before, and she did not slam the hangar door. That afternoon, Colonel Harrison summoned Fritz to his office. The urgency in the message suggested this was not routine. Fritz found the colonel standing at his window, shoulders tight, a classified folder open on his desk. "Sit down, Captain." Fritz sat. Harrison turned from the window. His face was grave in a way that went beyond the normal weight of command. "I did not bring you here just to verify speed figures. I suspected as much." Harrison opened the folder, pulled out a photograph, placed it on the desk facing Fritz. The image showed a man in Luftwaffe uniform standing beside a Focke-Wulf Tu-152, tall, blonde, smiling the way pilots smile when they have just completed a perfect flight. Fritz's breath stopped. "Klaus," he whispered. "Klaus Becker, your friend from flight school, test pilot for the TA-152 program. How do you know about Klaus?" Harrison pulled out another document. Official looking, stamps and signatures in the weight of secrets. "Because he was working for us, passing information, trying to end the war faster, save German lives." The world tilted. Fritz gripped the arms of his chair. "That is impossible. Klaus was loyal, a patriot. He would never." He saw the camp's captain. The extermination facilities. What Germany was really doing, and he could not be part of it anymore. Harrison laid out more documents, intercepted messages, technical specifications, performance data on the Do-3, 3-5, the TA-152, other projects Fritz only vaguely knew about. All in Klaus's handwriting. "He died 4 months ago. Aircraft failure during a test flight. We believe someone discovered his activities, sabotaged his plane." Fritz felt sick. Klaus, his friend, his brother in all but blood. The man who taught him advanced aerobatics, who stood beside him at Fritz's wedding, who wrote letters full of jokes and philosophy and dreams of flying faster than sound. Dead. Murdered for choosing conscience over country. "Why are you telling me this?" Harrison sat down across from Fritz, leaned forward, intense. "Because Klaus's last message said he had critical information about German wonder weapons, specific weaknesses, counter tactics. But he never transmitted it. He hid it somewhere safe, and the codes died with him." Harrison paused. "Let that sink in. Unless we have someone who knew him, someone who might know where he would hide backup information." The implication hung between them like a blade. "You want me to betray my country?" "Your country is burning, Captain. Civilians are dying every day. The war is lost. I am asking you to help end it faster, save lives, including German lives, including your family in Munich." Fritz stood abruptly, walked to the window, stared out at the airfield where American and captured German aircraft sat side by side. He thought of Klaus, of breakfast bacon, of Sarah's dead husband, of his sister hiding in bomb shelters, of Harrison's son dying in the pursuit of speed, of all the terrible choices war forced on people who just wanted to live. "I need time to think." "You have until tomorrow morning." Fritz walked out into cold December air that felt like absolution and damnation all at once. That night he could not sleep. The barracks were quiet except for the distant sound of a radio playing big band music, all brass and saxophone, and relentless American optimism. Fritz lay on his bunk and stared at the ceiling and thought about Klaus. They had met in 1936 at flight school, two engineering students who loved aircraft more than politics, more than ideology, more than anything except the pure joy of defying gravity. Klaus was the better pilot, but Fritz was the better engineer, and together they pushed each other to excellence. Klaus had been the first to express doubts. This was 1938 after Kristallnacht. They were drinking schnapps in Klaus's apartment, celebrating some minor achievement Fritz could no longer remember, when Klaus said quietly, "Do you think we are the good guys, Fritz?" And Fritz, young and stupid and drunk on Nazi promises, had laughed it off. But Klaus never laughed it off. He just got quieter, more careful, more deliberate in what he said and to whom he said it. And now Fritz understood why. Klaus had seen the truth early, had chosen conscience over comfort, had died for it. Fritz got up, pulled on his coat, walked outside. The airfield was beautiful in the darkness. Running lights on aircraft. The glow from hangars where night shift workers kept production running around the clock. Stars overhead, sharp and cold in winter sky. Somewhere out there, men were fighting and dying. But here there was only the quiet industry of building the instruments of war. Jimmy Cooper intercepted him near the perimeter fence. The lieutenant appeared out of shadows like a ghost flashlight in a hand sidearm on hip. "Can't sleep?" Jimmy asked. "No." "Want to talk about it?" They walked the fence line together, two men on opposite sides of history finding common ground in insomnia and doubt. "How do you know what is right?" Fritz asked. "When both sides claim justice." Jimmy was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "My granddad fought in the last war. Against Germany. He saw terrible things. Did terrible things, probably. But after, when it was over, he had a German friend. Man immigrated to Texas, started a ranch. They raised horses together until my granddad died." Jimmy kicked at a stone. "Granddad told me once, 'Jimmy, you want to know who is right? Look at what they do not, what they say. Words are cheap. Actions show truth.' And what do you see when you look at actions? I see Germany building death camps. I see America building liberty ships to feed Europe after we beat you. I see your government killing anyone who disagrees. I see our government, with all its problems, at least trying for something better." Jimmy stopped walking, looked at Fritz directly. "I see you, Fritz. A man questioning everything he believed. That takes courage. More courage than flying into combat." They stood there in darkness, and Fritz felt something fundamental shift inside him. Not a betrayal, not treason, just a simple recognition that loyalty to evil was not loyalty at all. It was cowardice dressed in uniform. The next morning, Fritz told Harrison what he knew. Klaus would have hidden information in maintenance logs, under false serial numbers. "It is an old trick we used as students. Hide equations in engine specifications. Make secrets look like data. Those logs are in Germany. Unless you captured a Ta-152. Harrison smiled, not triumphant, sad. "We did. 3 weeks ago, it is at Wright Field in Ohio." He stood. "You are coming with us." The flight to Wright Field took 4 hours. Fritz, Harrison, Sarah, and Jimmy crammed into a C-47 transport, it along with crates of documents and samples of advanced German equipment being analyzed by American intelligence. The drone of engines made conversation difficult, which suited Fritz fine. He needed time to think about what he was doing, about Klaus, about the line between honor and complicity. Sarah sat across from him, sketching something in a notebook. Engineering calculations, stress analysis, the language of flight that transcended nationality. After an hour, she looked up. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "That day you were shot down, before the P-51 got you, did you shoot down any of our bombers?" Fritz considered lying, then rejected it. "No, that day I was low on fuel, running for home. I saw a damaged B-17 trying to limp back to England. I could have finished it easily." He met her eyes. "But I saw the crew through the windows. Boys, scared, like I was my first combat. And I thought about how their mothers would receive telegrams, how their wives would cry, how their children would grow up without fathers." He looked down at his hands. "So I let them go, turned away, told myself it was because of fuel." But really, I just could not do it. Sarah was quiet for a long time. Then she said very softly, "Thank you for telling me that." Wright Field was massive, dozens of hangars, hundreds of aircraft. The full scope of American air power laid out in neat rows like some industrial vision of the future. Fritz saw P-51 HS being tested. The sleek XP-72 in final assembly. Captured German aircraft lined up like trophies. MEE-262 jets. A Dornier D-0335 with its distinctive push-pull engines. And there in a heavily guarded hangar, a Ta-152H1. Fritz approached the aircraft like a man approaching a shrine. This was Klaus's world. Klaus's dream. The aircraft they had discussed in theoretical terms over schnapps and cigarettes when the war was young, and they were younger and everything seemed possible. The Ta-152 was beautiful. Long wings for high-altitude work. Clean lines. Every detail optimized for that rarefied air at 40,000 feet, where the sky turned purple and the earth curved away beneath you. Fritz climbed onto the wing, found the cockpit, reached for the maintenance log tucked beside the seat. His hands trembled. The log was booby-trapped. Of course it was. Klaus was paranoid. Brilliant and paranoid. A small explosive charge enough to destroy documents wired to trigger if the wrong person opened it. But Fritz knew the sequence. Klaus had taught him. A joke between engineers. A game they played. His fingers found the hidden switch. Disarm the charge. Open the log. Inside were pages of performance data, technical specifications, and tucked between pages about oil pressure and fuel consumption, Klaus's handwriting. Small, precise, devastating. Complete analysis of the Do-335, flight characteristics, vulnerabilities. The aircraft's push-pull design made it fast but unstable in high G turns. The rear propeller created unique turbulence that could be exploited. Specific attack angles that would force the pilot into unrecoverable situations, and more. Information about jet programs, rocket projects, the desperate last gasps of German innovation. But most importantly, there was a letter addressed to Fritz. Sarah watched as the German pilot read it, watched the color drain from his face, watched tears begin to track down weathered cheeks, watched a man confront the deepest truth about himself and his cause and his choices. Fritz read Klaus's words and felt the last pieces of his old life crumble away. Fritz, if you are reading this, I am probably dead. I hope you understand why I did this. I saw the camps, brother. I saw what we are really fighting for. It is not glory, not honor, not the defense of the fatherland. It is genocide dressed in flags and anthems. I cannot let this continue. Neither can you. Trust the Americans. They are not perfect. God knows they have their sins, but they are better than us. Help them end this, not for America, for Germany's soul, for the chance that something good might survive this horror we created. Your friend, always Klaus. Fritz folded the letter carefully, put it in his pocket over his heart. Then he handed the maintenance log to Harrison. Here, everything Klaus knew. Use it well. Harrison took the log, then did something unexpected. He put his hand on Fritz's shoulder. Your friend was a brave man. He was a better man than I will ever be. He believed you would do the right thing. That is why he addressed the letter to you. That is a kind of faith most men never earn. Sarah stepped forward. She had been watching, listening, understanding in a way she had not been able to before. She reached out, touched Fritz's arm, just briefly, but it was the first time she had initiated contact. I am sorry for your loss, she said. Fritz could not speak, could only nod. They flew back to Farmingale in silence. The C-47's engines thrummed. The winter sun set behind them, painting clouds in shades of orange and gold. Below, America spread out in all its vast, complicated, contradictory glory. Fritz stared out the window and made himself a promise. He would honor Klaus's sacrifice. He would help end this war. And somehow, if he survived, he would build something better from the ashes of everything he had believed. The plane touched down as full darkness claimed the sky. Fritz walked across the tarmac toward his barracks. Klaus's letter pressed against his chest and knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new choices, new opportunities for both redemption and failure. But tonight he would mourn his friend, Mourn the Germany that might have been. Mourn the young man he had been before the bacon and the flight and the terrible gift of knowing better. Behind him, Sarah Mitchell stood watching, Jimmy Cooper beside her. Two Americans trying to understand the man who had been their enemy and was becoming something else, something harder to define, something that did not fit neatly into the categories war demanded. Think he will be okay, Jimmy asked. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I think he is becoming who he was always meant to be. And who is that? Someone who chooses what is right over what is easy. They walked back toward the hangars where tomorrow's tests awaited, where the race for speed continued, where America built the fastest fighters in the world and tried to build a better peace for when the shooting stopped. The stars came out, cold and distant and indifferent to human suffering, but also beautiful, still beautiful, always beautiful. And in his bunk, Fritz Weber lay awake and thought about Klaus and bacon and the long road from prisoner to something he could not yet name but desperately wanted to become. Spring came to Farmingdale like a promise. The snow melted, the runways dried, and the war in Europe entered its final desperate days. Fritz Weber spent those weeks doing what he did best. He flew, he analyzed, he helped American engineers understand the nuances of high-altitude performance, the subtle tricks of aerodynamic optimization, the hard-won lessons purchased with German blood and treasure. The intelligence from Klaus's maintenance log proved invaluable. American tacticians studied the Do-335's vulnerabilities, developed counter-strategies, shared them with fighter squadrons in Europe. How many American lives were saved by Klaus's betrayal would never be quantified. But Fritz believed in his heart the number was not zero, and that mattered. Sarah Mitchell began speaking to him, not friendly conversation, not yet, but professional exchanges that gradually included moments of almost warmth. She would ask his opinion on wing loading calculations. He would suggest modifications to control surface geometry. They were building something together. Not friendship exactly, but a working relationship grounded in mutual respect for engineering excellence. Jimmy Cooper took to bringing Fritz coffee in the mornings. Black, no sugar. The way pilots drank it when they needed to wake up fast and fly faster. They would stand together watching the sun rise over Long Island, two men from different worlds united by the ancient brotherhood of those who leave the earth behind. One morning in late April, Jimmy brought news along with the coffee. Radio says Hitler is dead. Berlin is falling. It is almost over, Fritz. Fritz had known this day would come, had prepared himself for it, but hearing the words still hit like a physical blow. Germany was defeated. The 1,000-year Reich had lasted 12 years and left nothing but rubble and shame. My family, Fritz said quietly. Munich. Colonel is already on it. He has been working with the Red Cross, tracking German civilians, trying to help. Fritz looked at Jimmy, this American who had every reason to hate him and instead chose something harder, something better. Thank you. Do not thank me yet. It is chaos over there. We will find them if we can. May 8th arrived with spring rain and news that made the world stop. Germany surrendered unconditionally. In Times Square, people danced in the streets. In Farmingdale, the factory workers gathered around radios and cheered. The European war was over. Fritz stood apart from the celebration. He felt no joy, only a deep, exhausted relief that the killing would stop, that perhaps now the work of rebuilding could begin, that perhaps his father and sister were alive somewhere in the ruins. Colonel Harrison found him standing alone near the XP-72 prototype, rain dripping from the hangar roof, the sound of distant celebration echoing across the airfield. Captain Weber, Fritz turned. Harrison looked older than he had 6 months ago. The weight of command, the weight of knowing his son died chasing speed while others lived to see victory. It is over, Fritz said. The war is over. The work continues. Harrison handed Fritz an envelope. Official looking, Army Air Force's seal. Fritz opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a contract, an offer of employment. Test pilot and technical consultant for the United States Army Air Forces. Starting immediately. Continuing indefinitely. Subject to security clearance and successful completion of citizenship requirements. I do not understand, Fritz said. The jet age is coming. We need the best minds, the best pilots, men who understand both sides of this conflict, men who can help us build not just faster aircraft, but a better peace. Harrison paused. Let Fritz process this impossible thing. There is more. We found your family, your father and sister. They survived. They are in a displaced persons camp outside Munich. We can bring them here, to America, to safety. Fritz's legs went weak. He sat down hard on a toolbox. His father, his sister, alive. Why he managed? Why would you do this? Because Klaus believed in you. Because you chose truth over loyalty to evil. Because this country was built by people running from the worst of the old world toward the possibility of something better. Harrison squatted down to Fritz's eye level. And because I need to believe my son's death meant something, that the speed he chased was not just numbers on a dial, but the velocity of human progress. You staying here helping us building instead of destroying. That gives Michael's sacrifice meaning. Fritz could not speak, could only nod. The reunion happened on a gray morning in July at Ellis Island. Fritz stood on the dock watching the ship come in, his heart hammering so hard he thought it might break his ribs. American officials moved around him with paperwork and protocols, but he barely noticed. His entire world had contracted down to that ship and the two people somewhere aboard it. The gangplank came down. Refugees streamed off, hollow-eyed, thin, carrying everything they owned in battered suitcases. The wreckage of Europe made manifest in tired faces and worn clothes. Then he saw them. His father, older than Fritz, remembered gray hair, now white shoulders, stooped but alive, walking, whole. And beside him, his sister Anna, 19 years old and somehow still beautiful, despite everything the war had taken. Fritz ran. He met them at the bottom of the gangplank and pulled them both into an embrace so tight it hurt. His father smelled like carbolic soap and old sweat and home. Anna sobbed against his shoulder. All three of them crying. Great racking sobs that released years of fear and separation and the terrible lottery of survival. I thought you were dead, his father said in German. When they told us you were shot down, I thought, I am alive, father. I am here. You are safe now. They stood there on American soil, three Germans who had lost their country and found each other and let the tears come. Around them, other reunions played out. Other families knitting themselves back together from the fragments war had made. Other stories of survival against impossible odds. Later in the processing center, Fritz's father pulled him aside. Friedrich, they tell me you are working for them, for the Americans. Fritz met his father's eyes, saw the question there. The old man had been a loyal German once, an engineer for the Luftwaffe, had built engines that powered aircraft that killed Allied airmen. Yes, father, I am helping them. You betrayed your oath. I betrayed an oath to monsters. There is a difference. His father was quiet for a long time. Then he said very softly, show me what they are building. Over the next weeks, Fritz brought his father and sister to Farmingdale, showed them the factory, the aircraft, the American workers who treated them not as enemies, but as refugees deserving of dignity. His father, the engineer, could not hide his admiration for American production methods. The efficiency, the scale, the relentless optimization. Anna got a job in the cafeteria. She served bacon and eggs and fried chicken to the workers and slowly learned to smile again. The war had made her old before her time, but America was teaching her how to be 19. One afternoon, Sarah Mitchell found Fritz in the hangar working on stability calculations for the P-52. She stood watching him for a moment. Then she spoke. My husband died on May 7th, 1944, 14 months ago. Fritz set down his pencil, turned to face her. Tomorrow is the anniversary. I go to the cemetery every year. I wanted to ask if you would come with me. The request stunned him. Why? Because I have been angry for so long, and I am tired of being angry, and I think David would want me to forgive. Not forget, but forgive. The cemetery was quiet. Green grass, white headstones, row after row of American war dead. Sarah led Fritz to a grave in the third row. Lieutenant David Mitchell, born 1920, died 1944. Beloved husband, faithful servant, hero. Sarah knelt, placed flowers on the grave. White roses, David's favorite. Fritz stood back, uncertain. This felt like sacred ground he had no right to tread. "Come here," Sarah said. He knelt beside her. David believed in mercy, in the basic humanity of even his enemies. He wrote me once about a German pilot he encountered over France. They were both damaged, both trying to get home. They flew formation for a few minutes, two enemies keeping each other alive. Then they parted ways. Sarah touched the headstone gently. "I think he would be glad you are here, Fritz. I think he would say this is what we were fighting for. Not to destroy Germany, but to save it from itself." They stayed there in silence, two people connected by loss and war and the so hard work of healing. When they finally stood, Sarah took Fritz's hand, just for a moment, but it was enough. The summer passed in a blur of testing and training and gradual integration into American life. Fritz studied for his citizenship exam, learned American history, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the revolutionary idea that government served the people, not the other way around. In October, word came. There would be a competition, an official test of the fastest piston-powered fighters in the world. American, British, and captured German aircraft, all flown at Muroc Dry Lake in California. Press invited. Military brass, the public. A celebration of aviation achievement, a demonstration of Allied superiority. A final chapter in the propeller age before jets made everything obsolete. Fritz was asked to participate, to fly the captured T-A152H1, to show American audiences what German engineering had achieved, to demonstrate that former enemies could work together toward common goals. He agreed. Muroc Dry Lake stretched flat and endless under October sun. The lake bed was perfect for high-speed runs, no obstacles, no weather complications, just open space and the thin desert air and aircraft pushed to their absolute limits. The competitors lined up like thoroughbreds before a race. The British brought a Spitfire Mark 14 with its Griffin engine beautiful and deadly. The Americans fielded the P-51H, the final evolution of the Mustang's sleek and purposeful. And the XP, 72 Republic's last piston fighter, massive and powerful. The captured T-A152 sat among them. Klaus's aircraft, Klaus's dream. Fritz walked the flight line studying each machine. Sarah walked beside him. They had become friends, real friends, the kind forged in shared grief and gradual trust. "Nervous?" she asked. "Always before flying." "Good, means you respect the aircraft." The competition began at dawn. The Spitfire went first. Its Griffin engine screamed as it tore across the lake bed, reaching 448 miles per hour in level flight. The crowd cheered, British engineering at its finest. The P-51H followed. Jimmy Cooper at the controls, grinning like a kid at Christmas. He pushed the Mustang to 487 miles per hour. The crowd went wild, American pride swelling. Then it was Fritz's turn. He climbed into the T-152, settled into the familiar German cockpit, started the Jumo engine. The sound was different from American radials. Higher pitched, more urgent. He taxied out, received clearance, began his run. The T-A152 climbed to 41,000 feet. The air up here was so thin, the sky turned purple. Fritz activated the GM1 nitrous oxide boost, felt the engine surge, pushed into level flight, 472 miles per hour. Klaus's dream realized. The aircraft they had discussed over schnapps, the machine built to dominate the stratosphere. Fast, elegant, beautiful, and utterly defeated by history. Fritz keyed his radio, spoke to the crowd below through the public address systems. This aircraft was designed by brilliant men, engineers who loved flight more than politics. They built this machine to be the fastest fighter at high altitude, and they succeeded. He paused. "But I want you to know something. I flew this aircraft for Germany. I believed we were right. I believed we were superior. I was wrong about everything." His voice cracked slightly. The fastest aircraft in the world means nothing if it flies for an evil cause. Klaus Becker, the test pilot who developed this machine, understood that. He gave his life to end the war faster, to save lives, German and American both. Fritz brought the Tau 152 down in a perfect landing, climbed out, stood before the assembled crowd, thousands of people, cameras, reporters, military officers, civilians. Colonel Harrison approached with a microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Friedrich Weber, former Luftwaffe ace, current United States Army Air Force's test pilot, and soon American citizen. The applause was hesitant at first, then stronger, then thunderous. Fritz took the microphone, his hands shook. For years I was told America was weak, soft, undisciplined. I believed it because believing made war easier. He looked out at the sea of faces. Then I tasted American bacon for breakfast. I saw women building the world's fastest aircraft. I watched different races working together toward common goals. I experienced what you call freedom. He gestured to the aircraft behind him. These machines, from the Tempest at 435 miles per hour to the XP-72 that will fly next. They represent more than speed. They represent what happens when free people work towards shared purpose. His voice grew stronger. I cannot undo my past, the men I shot down, the missions I flew, but I can tell you this. The greatest weapon America has is not aircraft or bombs. It is the idea that a man can change, that enemies can become friends, that yesterday's prisoner can be tomorrow's citizen. Tears ran down his face openly now. That is why Germany lost, not because our planes were slower, but because our ideas were poison. He looked directly at the cameras. Thank you for showing me a better way. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Fritz stood there overwhelmed, barely able to process what was happening. Sarah was crying, Jimmy was cheering. His father and sister stood in the crowd, pride and grief mixing on their faces. The final flight was the XP-72. Jimmy took it up, pushed it to the edge. 492.7 miles per hour, a new record. The fastest piston fighter ever flown. America won the speed race. But standing there on the lakebed watching the XP-72 roar past Fritz understood something deeper. The real victory was not measured in miles per hour. It was measured in the capacity for growth, for change, for choosing what was right over what was easy. That evening, Colonel Harrison found Fritz sitting alone watching the sun set over the desert. The older man sat down beside him. They were quiet for a long time. Then Harrison spoke. I need to tell you something about Michael, my son. Fritz waited. He did not die at Pearl Harbor like I told you. He died testing the XP-47J 6 weeks before you arrived. Pushed too hard, chasing speed. The aircraft failed. He failed. Harrison's voice broke. I brought you here because I needed to believe his death meant something. That we could turn an enemy into a friend. That we could win not just the war, but the peace. He looked at Fritz. You gave me my son back. Not literally, but you proved that his dream of a better world was possible. That the speed he chased was worth the price. Fritz put his hand on Harrison's shoulder. I will honor Michael's memory. Every day, I promise. The two men sat together as darkness claimed the desert. Two fathers who had lost sons to war, finding something like peace in shared grief and shared hope. The years that followed were full. Fritz became an American citizen in 1947, stood in a courthouse in New York and swore allegiance to the Constitution, to the idea that all men are created equal, to the proposition that government serves the people. He meant every word. He worked for the newly formed Air Force, then for NACA, which became NASA. He tested jets and rockets, helped train the next generation of pilots, became friends with Chuck Yeager. Was there the day the sound barrier fell? Anna married an American engineer, gave Fritz nieces and nephews who grew up speaking English with no accent, who knew nothing of war, who believed in America the way children believe in sunlight. His father lived to be 90, died peacefully in 1975, surrounded by family in a country that had given him refuge and purpose. Sarah never remarried, but she and Fritz remained close friends until her death in 1989. She was buried beside David. Fritz spoke at her funeral, talked about forgiveness and the long road from enemy to friend. The aircraft they tested, the 10 fastest fighters of World War II, found homes in museums. The Hawker Tempest, Mark V at 435 miles per hour, the P-51D at 440, the Bf-109K4 at 440, the Spitfire Mark 14 at 448, the T-152H1 at 472, the P-47M at 473, the Do-335 at 474, the P-51H at 487, the XP-72 at 490, and the legendary XP-47J at 502. Young Americans walk past them, read placards about speed and power and engineering. Most did not know the human stories behind the numbers, the choices made, the prices paid, the lives transformed. Fritz Weber died in 1998, 86 years old. At his funeral at Arlington National Cemetery, 3 Air Force generals gave eulogies. His tombstone read simply, Test Pilot, Engineer, American. His old Luftwaffe uniform hung in the Smithsonian beside his test pilot jacket, the German eagle and swastika next to the American flag. A reminder that people can change, that redemption is possible, that the human capacity for growth exceeds even our capacity for destruction. In the end, the fastest thing in the world was not a fighter plane screaming across the sky at 500 miles per hour. It was not American industrial might or German engineering excellence. It was the human heart's ability to transform, to choose mercy over vengeance, to build bridges across the deepest divides, to believe that tomorrow can be better than yesterday. Fritz understood this, lived it, proved it. And on quiet nights when the moon rose over the Smithsonian, if you listen carefully, you might hear the ghost of a German pilot whispering thanks to a country that gave him bacon for breakfast and a second chance at being human. The machines are silent now, the men who flew them mostly gone. But the lesson remains. Speed is just a number. What matters is the direction you choose to fly. If you or your family served during World War II, or if you encountered former prisoners of war, share your stories. Let us honor the generation that won the war and won the peace. Let us remember that even in our darkest hours, the choice to be better is always available. The sky is waiting. The future is unwritten. And somewhere a young pilot is learning to fly, carrying forward the legacy of men like Fritz Weber, who proved that transformation is the fastest journey of all.